Hello everyone, this is your host, Gabriel Garcia, the Wandering Quill and Wandering Scribe. Today is another Wandering Quill book impression. And today, I will be reading the first few chapters of the Seasons of Albadone, the Eight Chant Series, by Elan, Marche, and Christopher Warman. I had the pleasure of meeting these two at the LA Festival of Books. And I had just finished reading this whole book last night. And don't let the cover fool you. This story has some of the most gut-wrenching, unexpected stories I've ever read. Here's what it says on the back. 4 seasons, 4 stories. An aspiring enchantress searches for a way to lift a terrible curse. A drunken father makes a dangerous wish. A foreman tilts the balance between nature and progress. And a mother travels with her dying child in search of a healer. 4 paths merge. 4 destinies intertwine. Now, from what I've been told by the authors, this is the first book in the series. And the second book is coming out soon, as well as the third book. From what I know, after speaking with them at the festival, they are separate stories, but they do connect to the same main story. So in each story, there will be a different set of characters in a different location, but they'll all be telling one cohesive grand story. And that story begins in the 4 seasons of Albadone. And here's one of the reviews on the back that perfectly summarizes the 4 seasons of Albadone. Don't underestimate the emotional impact these stories will have on you, and see why, as the seasons turn, so too must the choices of mankind. Now, if that doesn't peck your interest, I don't know what will, but let us begin and see for ourselves. Seasons of Albadone, the Eight Chant Series, by Elan, Marche, and Christopher Warman. And before I do begin, here is the beautiful map of the world. This is a perfect picture of what the world of Albadone is. Oh, Albadone, I should say. And it gives you an idea of where each character is in the story. Now, the story is divided into 4 parts: autumn, winter, spring, and summer. Now, we're reading the prologue as well as the first 2 chapters of autumn. And with that, let us begin. Prologue. In the beginning of time, the True One created all that ever was. The lands, the waters that cut through them, the sky and the trees that reached for it. The True One smiled and marveled at what he had made, for it was perfect. One day the dragons came to him. "Hello, brave dragons, guardian of the mountains," the True One said, expecting a polite reply. "It's not warm enough," the disgruntled dragons complained. "How are we to keep our flames alive?" The True One was taken aback. "I was sure the warmth was perfect. But it is not enough for you, brave dragons. I shall split the year into 2 seasons, one much warmer than the other." The dragons returned to their mountains, content. Time passed, and the griffins came to the True One. "Hello, valiant griffins, guardians of the skies," he said, once again expecting a polite greeting. "It's not windy enough," the ungrateful griffins cried. "How are we to soar across the lands far and wide?" "Now, there's no mistaking that the winds were perfect," the True One explained. "But if it isn't windy enough for you, valiant griffins, I shall split this year into a 3rd season of high winds." The griffins returned to the skies content. More time passed, and the mares came to the True Ones. "Hello, gentle mares, guardians of the waters," the True One said, now unsure that he was ever going to receive a polite reply. "There's not enough water," the thankless mares declared. How are we to swim from sea to sea when there's so much land in our path? The True One sighed. I thought the amount of water was perfect. But if there isn't enough water for you gentle mares, I shall split the year into a fourth season of snow, that the land may be covered in water at least for a time. The mares returned to their waters content. The True One watched as the 4 seasons passed, as heat scorched crops, winds uprooted trees, and snow froze the bodies of those who could not find shelter. I thought I had made the perfect world. Then one day the milk came to the True One. Let me guess, the True One lamented. You wish for a season for all yourselves, like the other guardians. We do not, the milk replied. Oh? The True One intoned. What is it you want of me, dear milk? We wish only to offer our thanks, the milk praised, for you have created the lands we inhabit, the skies that brighten our days, and the nights and waters that nourish and cleanse us. The True One smiled upon the milk. Swiftly he waved a mighty hand across the land. A forest of tall trees sprouted where his shadow passed. As a reward for your unwavering thankfulness, humble milk, I give you a land of wonders. As long as you care for it, you shall want for nothing. The milk bowed their heads and thanked the True One. We will name this land Albadone, and we shall guard it until the end of time. Oh, I have no doubt of that, the True One said. Autumn, an enchantress. Chapter 1. The Woods of Albadone. Puffs of gray smoke emerging from the brown and orange trees and rising into the sparsely clouded sky marred the otherwise breathtaking view of the forest of Albadone. It was a particularly biting autumn morning, so anyone who wasn't already busy at work was huddled in their small homes by the warmth of fire. Adriel envied them. She had left her cabin in the face-numbing darkness of early morning to fetch this and that for one of Mother Ola's many enchantments. The old woman was always busy with something. It was hard to keep track of exactly what she was doing. Adriel didn't really mind the early morning treks, as they allowed her the opportunity to meet with the woodfolk neighbors that lived near their small home and explore the thick woods. Anything to get out of that decrepit old cabin, she thought to herself. Autumn wasn't her least favorite season. Winter took that prize, but it was far from being her favorite. When she was a child especially, she could feel the trees pulsing with life strongly in the spring and a bit more lazily in the summer, but that also meant she could feel them as they became dormant in autumn and slept miserably in the winter, longing for spring. She always felt sorry for them, even now that she knew it was just part of the cycle of nature. Mother Ola had told her that it was a good thing that she could feel the cycle through the trees, and that it was a sign that she would grow to become a powerful enchantress. One day, the old woman had told her during one of her lessons, when you are whole, you will sense the cycle of nature not only in the trees, but in everything that surrounds you. The soil, the wind, even the air you breathe. Adriel wasn't sure that was something she wanted. Hearing the fluctuating pain of the trees as they were forced to sleep by the invisible hand of the cycle had been at best a discomfort, at worst overwhelming. But Mother Ola had told her that sensing the cycle was an important part of being an enchantress, and that was what Adriel wanted more than anything in the whole world. The top of Chantress Hill, where she now stood, held one of her favorite sights. The woods stretched out as far as the eye could see. The womb of the world, the large black mountain where life energy itself was said to have originated at the beginning of time, was a ghostly apparition through the morning mist in the west, and barely visible. North of the mountain was the high tower of Vizen, where the royals were no doubt still asleep. Lastly, a new structure had appeared in the landscape in the center of the woods, a few miles south. A large wooden tower erupted from the trees like an arm of a drowning man from a mud-brown lake. Those folks had been hard at work building the tall structure for several weeks now. Mother Ola had scoffed and cursed, accusing the workers of corrupting the land. Adriel was almost sure Mother Ola had no idea what the thing was even supposed to be. The girl removed her brown leather gloves and rubbed her stiff hands together. The sun had been out for a good part of an hour, but it would take several more before the air would warm. Her hood was pulled up, casting a sharp shadow above her eyes. Underneath, her ears were still struggling to thaw. Adriel put her gloves back on and turned towards the sparse, gnarled trees growing atop the hill. Rotting corpse of a drowned tree lay across the bulging roots of another. Adriel crouched in front of the hollow trunk and peeked inside. Dark brown mushrooms covered in small holes lined the top of the trunk. They were called pox-cheek mushrooms, as their lumpy texture resembled that of a pox-scarred face. The sickly, sweet smell of decay and moisture was an indication that they were ripe for harvest. Adriel unsheathed the small dagger, one that was given to her by Mother Ola on her 10th year under the woman's tutelage. From her belt, it began scraping the mushrooms into a small sack pouch until it was full. With a piece of twine, she closed the pouch and placed it gently inside her satchel. She scraped one last mushroom and placed it in her mouth. Its texture was soft and silky, melting in her mouth with each bite. The taste was not as pleasant, dirt at the forefront of the flavor, and a strange sweetness at the back end that reminded her of rotten nuts. It wasn't a flavor she loved, but she truly did enjoy the texture enough for her to forgive it. Adriel returned the knife to her belt and stood to her feet. She looked out to the forest one final time, filling her lungs with the cold autumn air. When she exhaled, a cloud surrounded her and immediately vanished. She was making her way back to the beaten path that led down the hill when a sudden flash of silver light filled her vision and was gone in an instant. Adriel looked around the hilltop for what might have caused such a beam. From the angle, she assumed it must have been the sun reflecting off something on the ground. As she moved, her eyes caught another stab of blinding light. Now sure of the light's origin, Adriel approached the thorny bush. She carefully held the prickly branches aside and reached into the bush with her other hand. She felt a trail of white heat as the thorn scraped her arm, thankfully not enough to draw blood. She grabbed the mysterious object and slowly pulled her arm back out. In her hand was a silver feather, pointed at the end like a dagger and more reflective than a shard of glass when the sun caught it just right. When the sun wasn't on it, its vein refracted the light like a rainbow. She had only ever seen something like this in one of Mother Ola's books. Most of those old tomes contained lists of ingredients and recipes for all sorts of enchantment, very few of them accompanied by illustrations. The full-page image of a silver feather had always stood out to her, especially since it belonged to a creature called a milk, which the book classified as extinct. She twirled the feather between her gloved hands, sunlight bouncing crazily in every direction, and then placed it gingerly in her satchel. Adriel made her way down the path. Browning leaves sloshed under her boots. The skeletal trunks of soon-to-be barren trees rose around her on either side like a rib cage as she descended, and a few moments later she reached the flat terrain below, the belly of the forest. A bead of sweat ran down her forehead after the demanding downhill walk, despite the morning chill. From her satchel she produced a small leather flask and raised it to her lips, gulping the cold water much too quickly and causing a headache to rear up in the back of her head to the bottom of her throat. Her brow furrowed with regret. Children's voices trickled through the trees in the distance, followed by the approaching pitter-patter of tiny feet. A small smile appeared on Adriel's face. The girl bit her lip deviously as she set her satchel at the base of a nearby tree. Slowly she sneaked towards the origins of those voices, carefully to neither make a sound nor be seen. As she moved closer, the voice became clear. "You always get to decide what to play," protested a young boy. Adriel was sure that was Haman. "I don't make the rules," explained the other boy, taller. "I'm the eldest, so I always get to decide. We're playing builders." "But I want to play dragon hunters," whined Hammond. "Quiet, you. I'm your foreman," Toller said while putting in a deep voice. "We must build a tower to the skies so that—" "Put that down, Haman. A dragon hunter never lays down his sword." Haman proclaimed in the most heroic voice. Adriel suppressed the laughter. "We're not playing dragon hunters," Toller yelled. A silence so deep filled the air that you could hear nearby leaves hit the ground. "You said a bad word," Haman accused. "I'm telling Mother." Adriel covered her mouth. It was becoming increasingly difficult to smother her laughter. She peeked around the tree in time to catch Haman running off into the woods, pursued closely by his protesting older brother. It was now or never. Adriel ran out of her cover and chased down those boys. She caught up to them quickly and snatched them up in her arms, first Taller, then Haman, while making guttural screeches, her best impression of a dragon. Taller yelped as soon as his feet left the ground, while Haman flailed and screamed, "Let me go! Let me go!" "Never!" Adriel replied in a monstrous voice. "Once a dragon has its prey, it never lets go." "We're not playing dragon hunters," Taller lamented. Adriel dropped the boy on the ground and stopped to catch her breath. "My, you two are getting heavy." The girl made her way back to the tree where she had left her satchel, the boys at her heel. "What are you doing in the woods, Mother Adriel?" Taller asked, Nelta trying to distract her brother from the cursed word that he had said moments earlier. He had the same dark black hair as their father, but it was curly and untamed like their mother's. Haman, on the other hand, was an anomaly, with his bright and fiery strawberry hair. Two things marked them as brothers, their green-gray eyes and their rounded cheeks, both of which they took after the mother, Yolta. "I'm collecting some ingredients for Mother Ola," she explained. "She's working on an enchantment." "I bet it's a flying potion," Haman exclaimed in that excited manner he always had. Toller shook his head and spat. "There's no such thing as a flying potion." "There is too," Haman explained frantically. "Like in the story, stories aren't real. Are too, are not." The argument continued back and forth like this until Adriel interrupted. "Do you want to see something special?" Adriel hoped she could make the boys stop arguing. They were dear children, but she didn't know how Yolta did it sometimes in a house full of men. Before the boys could answer, Adriel produced the milk feather from the satchel with a flourish. Haman let out an elongated gasp while Toller went wide-eyed in awe. "Can I touch it?" was all Toller asked. "Me too," Haman was quick to add. "One at a time," Adriel said while handing the feather to Toller. "And be gentle." Toller twirled the feathers between his fingers, sending silver rays of light bouncing across his face. "What is it?" "I believe it's a milk feather," Adriel explained. "Milk feather?" Haman asked. "She said milk, you dolt, not milk." "Toller, be nice to your brother," Adriel admonished. She nodded towards the feather and then at Haman. Toller sighed and handed the feather to his brother. The younger brother's eyes grew wide as he watched the rainbow crawl across the blade-like length of the feather. "What's a milk?" he asked. "It's a very old creature, one that hasn't existed in these woods for many, many years. I plan on giving it to Mother Ola to see if perhaps she can make something from it." "Can she make a flying potion with it?" Haman asked excitedly. Toller rolled his eyes and groaned. Adriel smiled and took the feather from Toller's hand. "Unfortunately, milk weren't flying creatures. But if I hear of a way to make a flying potion, you'll be the first one I tell." Haman gave her a grin, exposing a hole in the top right side of his mouth where a baby tooth had recently fallen out. Are my boys giving you gripe?" Yolta appeared from nearby trees and joined them. The young woman's heavy hooded cloak was untied and gently draped around her shoulders so that a wrap could be tied diagonally across her chest. In the wrap, her newborn boy, Elgar, softly snoozed. Her hood was down, revealing thick auburn locks that freely cascaded across her shoulders. In her left arm was a basket full of glittering black berries. Her gray-green eyes, like their sons, were immediately drawn to the silver feather in Adriel's hand. "Not at all," Adriel said with a smile. "You don't have to be polite. I know how these two are." Haman ran to his mother and hugged her leg tightly, making the woman waver to the added weight. Adriel turned to Toller and pointed to the basket. "Seems like your mother needs help with that." Toller groaned and begrudgingly took the basket from his mother. "Good boy." Yolta nodded thankfully. "Say goodbye to Mother Adriel, boys. I need you home." "So long, Mother Adriel," Haman said sadly. "Bye," Toller said curtly, heading toward the trees. Yolta grabbed her eldest son's shoulder and turned to face Adriel. Taller, show Mother Adriel proper respect. It's all right, Yolta, Adriel assured the woman. No, my boys need to learn the proper respect that must be paid to an enchantress. Yolta turned her attention to her boys and adopted a lecturing tone. One day, when Mother Ola is gone, Mother Adriel will be the one we turn to when we need enchantments for our gardening equipment, wards for our home, or need something soothing for when wives bear children. Now, Taller, show the enchantress proper respect. Taller grunted, his eyes never leaving the ground. Goodbye, Mother Adriel. Adriel thought the lecture was a bit much, but she wasn't about to criticize. Yolta's mothering, if the boys must learn respect, was up to her to decide. She smiled at the boys and mused her hair gently. I'll see you soon. Taller turned and headed into the trees toward the family's cabin. You too, Haman, Yolta added. Taller said a bad word, Hammond blurted out before running up after his brother. His mother's eyes shot up in bewilderment. Adriel chuckled. Those boys, Yolta muttered. I hate to say it, but they're mirroring image of their father when he was young. Our family homes were on the same tenure, so my brothers and I would play with him. You should have seen the teasing he would give me when his father found out he had thrown rocks at the neighbor's girl. True one knows he got a switching worth a lifetime. He never teased me again after that. It's hard to imagine Braid as sort of a child, Adriel said, the feather twirling in her hands. He was very difficult back then. Now he's all about his labor. Not that I'm complaining. We want for nothing, and it's mostly because of Braid's hard work. Yolta's eyes fell upon the feather. Its reflected light making her already bright eyes appear even brighter. Adriel smiled and handed the feather to the woman. Yolta examined it and carefully noted that it was a treasure of unqualified worth. My granny had one just like it. She said her mother had given it to her. It's one of the few things she was burned with when she passed. A milk feather. It wasn't a question, but Adriel nodded in response. My granny used to tell me stories from her mother's childhood. Terrible, bloody stories about those vicious things wiping out an entire tenure in a single night. Perhaps they were simply trying to scare you so you would behave. Like stories of Weedlebogs and the Shale folk. Yolta shook her head. Not these stories, the way my granny told them. Said the milk were pushing out all of Albadone after a long week's hunt. But those who remember have long passed. Yolta returned the feather to Adriel with a small sigh. I'm sure Mother Ola knows something about it if you ask her. I'll do just that when I return home. Adriel carefully placed the feather in her satchel. Yolta's eyes stayed on it until it was completely out of her sight. Please give Mother Ola my best regards, and do stop by for dinner for some time, the both of you. I'll make roasted boar and blackberry tots. Oh, and I have a fresh batch of spiced wine that will warm you to the bone. Adriel bowed her head slightly in thanks. You're too kind, Yolta. I'll make sure to let Mother Ola know. Yolta returned the bow and flashed a smile so quickly that it might have only been Adriel's imagination. The baby wrapped around Yolta's chest began to squirm and fuss. The young woman gently shushed the child as she headed towards her home. The sun was finally warm enough in the late morning air. Adriel pulled back her hood, revealing a mess of brown curls that were barely corralled into a ponytail behind her head by an unfortunate sliver of a ribbon. She wiped the dampness off her neck and proceeded deeper into the woods, eastward from where Yolta and her children are headed. She conjured a list in her mind of all of Mother Ola's tombs she had read, hoping to recall some clues as to which of the contained information regarding milk. There was so much information in those tombs, and often she found herself skimming paragraphs or skipping chapters entirely, especially the boring subjects. She loved reading on higher enchantings, but the chapters of runesmithing drove her to sleep. Mother Ola had swatted her hand and called her lazy bones when she caught her skipping a chapter or dozing off. Runesmithing is the most essential part of enchanting, the old woman scolded. How was a seamstress supposed to sew without string, a blacksmith craft a sword without iron? Adriel knew her teacher was right, but nothing could make reading about the subject any more endurable. The cabin was about 4 miles from Chanter's Hill, and took up until midday for her to reach it. It stood in an almost perfect circular clearing. Stood wasn't quite the right word to describe the dilapidated state of the cabin. Mother Ola claimed that it was built 300 years past using wood from an ancient tree, a wishing tree, to be more precise, that was cut down after a king's poorly phrased wish caused his firstborn to die. Adriel thought the story was a nonsense excuse for Mother Othel to avoid having the cabin rebuilt. The windows were drafty and the roof was leaky when it rained, causing the floorboards to rot in certain spots. The musty smell of soft decaying wood pervaded every corner of the cabin. Even the tombs in the library smelled like old dirt. Their pages warped from water damage several decades old. The less time Adriel spent in the cabin, the better. She preferred to study outside in the fresh air sometimes. In fact, any times, anyway. As she made her way to the cabin, she passed by the spiral. A peculiar installation of runestones Mother Ola said predated the cabin by at least several hundred years. Adriel was sure the old woman often exaggerated dates to give certain things the illusion of being more important than they really were. The spiral was comprised of 50 or so dead runestones, gray runestones whose magic had been fully utilized, splayed artfully on the ground in a spiral shape. Adriel had to admit that the runestones toward the center of the spiral did look quite old. The runic symbols erased by the elements, but several hundred years seemed to stretch. Mother Ola had never exactly explained what the use of the spiral was, but based on the whispers of life energy emanating from it, Adriel assumed their function was a sort of warding. When she asked, Mother Ola always dismissed it and ignored the question. The old woman hated being caught not knowing something. A black cloud arose from the chimney. Mother Ola had begun performing whatever enchantment she was working on. If Adriel didn't hurry in with the pock cheek she knew, she received a switching to rival braids. And we are going to stop here. Now, this was just the first chapter in the first part of the story. As I mentioned before, the story is divided into 4 sections representing the 4 seasons. And this section follows the enchantress, with the main character being Adriel. Now, I love how we get an allusion to the future chapters to come. We learn about the foreman, Braid, who is building something. And we already met Heyman and Taller, Braid's children, as well as Yolta, Braid's wife. We learn a little bit more of the world that Adriel lives in and how it's going to change over the series of the story and with the characters. What I love most about this book is that it doesn't give you too much, in the sense that it doesn't overly tell you what's going to happen next. It gives you enough in the prologue to let you know what the story is like, what the world of Albadone is. And in the first chapter of the Enchantress, we learn through Adriel the world surrounding it. We learn about the mountains. We learn about the structure. We learn about the milk. Now, I won't spoil it, but the milk is a important part of the story. It's going to have ramifications for all the characters coming forward, especially Adriel. What I love about this is the world building. It's very character driven as well. We get a little bit enough of Adriel to figure out who she is. She's a very eager enchantress. She wants to learn. And we see through her eyes the world of Albadone. We also learn from Yolta about what Brain's character is. He's very much into his work. He wants progress. He lives in the forest of Albadone, but much like his son, he doesn't believe in the old stories. Heyman, however, the younger son, he does believe in those old stories. He finds them fascinating. But Yolta, she knows a little bit more. From what she does know from her grandmother, according to the story, the Melk were violent, vicious creatures. Killed a whole group of people. And that's going to be huge. What Yolta said in that first chapter is going to play out throughout the series, and more specifically throughout the book. Now, overall, structure-wise, it's great. It reads very easily. I love how the authors are able to craft a world that's organic and real, yet still unknown. the forest itself is given its own sense, its own identity. It's a character. And I love the introduction of the True One, being this god that is praised by those that praise the True One. The characters are well written in the first chapter so far, and I have no doubt that they will be. Well, I should know. I read the whole book. And my rating, this is a 5 out of 5. Easily. Now, if you want to read the Seasons of Albadone, I will link it below to where you can purchase a copy. And if you want to engage with the authors, I will link their social media handle down below. Well, listeners, this has been the Wandering Quill book impressions of the Seasons of Albadone, the Eight Chant Series. I urge you all to check it out. It's a fantastic book. It is hot on the market right now, and I will say this with the utmost authority. This is the next generation of fantasy fiction, and I have no doubt it will be amongst the titans down the road. Well, everyone, thank you all for watching this book impressions video. Please make sure to like and subscribe to this channel if you want to see my other videos and other book impressions. And make sure to comment down below what you think is going to happen in the Seasons of Albadone. Well, thank you all very much, and be on the lookout for future book impressions episodes coming to this channel soon. This is the Wandering Quill, signing out.